Stalin arrested him in August 1937, tortured him for 2.5 years, knocked out 9 teeth with hammers, smashed his toes until he couldn't walk, broke 3 ribs, put him in front of firing squads and pulled the trigger with blank rounds. Then in March 1940, without explanation, they opened the prison doors and sent him straight back to command. 2 months later, Germany invaded. Stalin needed him desperately. This is the story of Konstantin Rokossovsky, a general who refused to lie even when telling the truth meant death, and how Stalin's paranoia nearly cost the Soviet Union the entire war. It's about what happens when a dictator purges the very people he needs to survive. August 1937. Rokossovsky commands the 5th Cavalry Corps in the Transbaikal region. He's 40 years old, respected by his men. Then one morning, NKVD agents appear at his headquarters without warning. They arrest him on charges of espionage, Polish spy, Japanese collaborator, traitor to the Soviet Union. The accusations are absurd. Everyone knows it. But in 1937, absurdity doesn't matter. Stalin's Great Purge is at its height. 30,000 military officers will lose their positions. Thousands will be executed. Division commanders, corps commanders, innovators who revolutionized Soviet military doctrine, shot in basements or worked to death in camps. The paranoia has its own logic. Anyone competent enough to lead an army is competent enough to threaten Stalin's power. Rokossovsky is taken to Kresty prison in Leningrad, where interrogators use medieval torture to break him. They want a confession. They want names. They want him to implicate others in a conspiracy that doesn't exist. But Rokossovsky refuses. They knock out his front teeth with hammers. He doesn't sign. They smash his toes, crushing bone until walking becomes agony. He doesn't sign. They break 3 of his ribs. Still he doesn't sign. His cellmate watches in horror, convinced Rokossovsky will die. Most men break within days. The torture isn't just physical pain, it's psychological warfare. Sleep deprivation. Isolation. The constant knowledge that signing means a quick execution, while refusing means the torture continues indefinitely. Here's what keeps Rokossovsky alive in that cell. He knows something his interrogators don't. One of his accusers, the man whose testimony forms the basis of the charges, died in 1920 during the Civil War. Rokossovsky proves it. He shows the court documents. The man they claim denounced him was killed at the Battle of Perekop 15 years earlier. It's impossible evidence to ignore, even in Stalin's system. But they don't release him. Not yet. Twice they take him out to be shot, standing him against a wall while a firing squad aims. They pull the triggers, blank rounds. Then they drag him back to his cell. Imagine that moment. The certainty of death. The sound of gunfire. Then nothing. Back to the cold stone floor and the waiting. It's designed to destroy whatever's left of a man's mind. Rokossovsky survives it. Decades later, his daughter says he kept a loaded pistol by his bed until the day he died. He told her once that if they came for him again, he wouldn't be taken alive. Meanwhile, the Red Army is hemorrhaging leadership. In 1939, Stalin invades Finland. It should be easy. The Soviet Union has overwhelming numerical superiority. But the campaign is a disaster. Soviet divisions stumble through snow, poorly coordinated, taking massive casualties against a much smaller Finnish force. Why? Because Stalin executed the generals who knew how to fight. The officers leading Soviet troops are terrified of making decisions. They wait for orders from above, and when those orders don't come, they freeze. The Finns slaughter them. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet casualties. International humiliation. Stalin's purges have gutted the military's ability to function. And he knows it. He needs officers who can think. Officers like Rokossovsky. March 1940. The prison door opens. No explanation. No apology. After 2.5 years in Kresty, Rokossovsky walks out into daylight. His teeth are gone. His toes are permanently damaged, requiring custom shoes. His ribs have healed wrong. But he's alive. Defense Minister Semyon Timoshenko, recently appointed after the Finland debacle, needs experienced commanders desperately. Timoshenko personally advocated for Rokossovsky's release. Within weeks, Rokossovsky is restored to the rank of Major General and given command of a mechanized corps. No trial. No explanation for the arrest. The Soviet system doesn't apologize. It simply pretends the last 2.5 years never happened. June 1941. Germany invades. Operation Barbarossa crashes across the Soviet border with 3 million men. Stalin, who ignored every intelligence warning, is paralyzed. The Red Army collapses. Entire divisions are encircled and destroyed. This is what Stalin's purges created. An army terrified to act without orders from officers too scared to give them. Rokossovsky takes command of the 9th Mechanized Corps. Within weeks, most of his tanks are destroyed. But something different happens under his leadership. His units fight smart. They retreat when ordered but maintain discipline. They slow the German advance. Stalin notices. Here's what makes Rokossovsky different. He thinks, in an army where thinking got you executed, where following orders blindly was survival, Rokossovsky analyzes the battlefield and makes decisions. When Georgy Zhukov orders a withdrawal, Rokossovsky argues against it. He's proven right. The withdrawal costs more than it saves. Zhukov never forgives him for it. But Stalin remembers. Rokossovsky defends Moscow. He fights at Stalingrad, where his armies encircle and destroy the German 6th Army. 22 German divisions. Gone. It's the turning point of the entire war. Then comes Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. Rokossovsky commands the Central Front. He predicts exactly where the Germans will attack and builds defenses that crush their offensive. But the most remarkable moment comes during planning for Operation Bagration in 1944, the liberation of Belarus. Stalin wants to concentrate Soviet forces at a single point. Standard Soviet doctrine. Smash through in one place. Rokossovsky disagrees. He argues for a two-pronged attack. Stalin calls him into a meeting. Orders him to reconsider. Rokossovsky refuses. 2 fronts, Comrade Stalin. 2 fronts. Stalin sends him out of the room. Tells him to think it over. Rokossovsky returns. Same answer. This happens 3 times. The entire room expects Stalin to have him arrested. Everyone remembers what happened to generals who disagreed with Stalin. They're dead or in camps. But Rokossovsky just spent 2.5 years being tortured and refused to break. He's not going to break now over military strategy. Stalin walks over, puts a hand on Rokossovsky's shoulder, and says quietly that Rokossovsky's conviction shows correct judgment. They'll do it his way. The attack succeeds brilliantly. Army Group Center is destroyed. The Germans lose 28 divisions. Think about what this means. Stalin arrested Rokossovsky for crimes he didn't commit, tortured him for years, then needed him so desperately that he released him and gave him command. Then Rokossovsky disagreed with Stalin to his face, repeatedly, on matters of life and death for millions of people. And Stalin backed down. Not because Stalin suddenly became reasonable, but because by 1944 even Stalin understood. The officers he didn't purge, the ones who survived by refusing to confess to fake crimes, the ones stubborn enough to argue tactics even after seeing what happened to those who spoke up, these were the only ones capable of winning the war. Rokossovsky becomes a marshal of the Soviet Union. He commands the Second Belarusian Front into Germany. He's a war hero, decorated, celebrated. Then Stalin turns on him again. 1946. Marshal Alexander Novikov, head of the Air Force, is arrested. Under torture, he signs a statement claiming Rokossovsky is conspiring against Stalin. It's a lie. Everyone knows it. But Stalin strips Rokossovsky of his positions anyway and sends him to command a military district in Odessa. A humiliating exile. From hero of the Soviet Union to commanding a backwater. Rokossovsky says nothing. He serves without protest. In 1953, Stalin dies. Rokossovsky is recalled. Made deputy defense minister. He arrests Lavrentiy Beria, Stalin's secret police chief. Beria is executed. But Rokossovsky's rivals force him into retirement in 1957. He spends his final years writing memoirs. His memoirs begin in 1940, as if the previous 3 years simply vanished. Here's what haunts this story. Rokossovsky was right. About tactics. About strategy. About how to defend Moscow, break Stalingrad, win at Kursk. He was right when he disagreed with Zhukov. He was right when he challenged Stalin. And for being right, for speaking truth, Stalin had him tortured until walking required custom shoes and eating required false teeth. Then Stalin needed him anyway. Released him. Used him. Then exiled him again when the war ended. Stalin's system couldn't tolerate competence without suspicion. Excellence became evidence of ambition. Initiative proved disloyalty. The very qualities that made someone capable of defending the Soviet Union made them a threat to Stalin's power. So Stalin destroyed his own military leadership, then watched in 1941 as the consequences nearly destroyed the country. Rokossovsky lived until 1968. He's buried at the Kremlin wall, honored as a hero. But he spent the last years of his life carrying a pistol, ready to shoot himself rather than return to prison. That's what survival looked like under Stalin. Not victory. Not vindication. Just the permanent knowledge that telling the truth, being competent, refusing to sign false confessions, these things might get you tortured again at any moment. And the only insurance was a loaded gun. Stalin never apologized. The system never acknowledged the injustice. Rokossovsky's story isn't about redemption. It's about the cost of surviving in a system where excellence is dangerous and truth is punishable by death. Where a man can be right about everything that matters and still spend years having his bones broken because someone needed a scapegoat. That's the reality Rokossovsky lived with. Not the glory. Not the medals. Just the gun by the bedside and the knowledge that he survived when thousands didn't, not because he was smarter or braver, but because someone needed him just enough to let him live. For now. Subscribe to watch daily WW2 Hidden Stories.